The Cold War and the ambitions of Soviet scientists gave birth to a whole series of incredible projects aimed at making the USSR an unbeatable power. Spacecraft with missiles, mind control radio, or superhumans with titanium skeletons. These were all real projects that hundreds of people worked on. We will tell you about the most secret of them, and at the end, we will show you an unbelievable spacesuit in which a person's head could live separately from their body. In the last century, during a period of complex political tensions when the competition between the USSR and the USA was at its height, space played a significant role. In response to the American X-20 project, which aimed to create a unique orbital vehicle with the capabilities of a bomber, scout, and interceptor, the Soviet Union decided to develop its aviation and space system. The task of creating it was assigned to design Bureau number 115, with Gleb Lozino-Lozinsky appointed as its head. This fantastic development received the code name Spiral. Engineers exerted all their efforts to realize the concept of a combat space vehicle. Lozinsky proposed to divide the project into three main parts: a hypersonic booster aircraft, a rocket accelerator with 2 stages, and an aircraft capable of reaching orbit. The new booster could reach an incredible speed of 5,000 miles per hour and reach an altitude of 20 miles. Afterward, the aircraft separated from the booster, reaching a speed of 4,500 miles per hour. It then entered Earth's orbit and performed various tasks such as reconnaissance flights, intercepting targets in space, Earth space bombings, and other military missions. This development had numerous advantages, including the ability to rapidly move to any point on Earth and make landings in various combat conditions. However, in the 1970s, when the first prototype had already been manufactured, the project was suddenly halted without explanation. Andrei Grechko, who held the position of Minister of Defense of the USSR at that time, decisively cancelled the research, stating that it was unnecessary. Unfortunately, this promising Soviet space endeavor was forgotten and lost. But believe it or not, this is not the most technologically advanced and bizarre project that the Soviet Union tried to create to counter the USA. In the United States, a special department was established with Professor Strasberg at its helm. The task was simple: gather and analyze information about the secret experiments conducted by the Soviet Union on its territory. The US feared a human modification program and the potential success in creating super soldiers, rumors of which persisted in the post-war era. The Americans indeed found evidence confirming the existence of such a program in the Soviet Union. It was initiated as early as the 1930s by order of the party. The Americans uncovered research results and intelligence data that the Nazis had referred to when conducting active espionage in the USSR. More than 300 soldiers participated in this program, but the results did not satisfy the party. Military personnel had titanium prostheses instead of bones and joints, but the material poorly integrated, and many could not bear the pain after the surgery, leading to their deaths or disability. Despite the negative results, researchers decided to dig into the soldiers' brains to block areas responsible for pain perception. Golden needles were implanted in their heads, making the soldiers impervious to injuries and enhancing the success of titanium bone implants. However, these manipulations also led to psychological disorders. The information presented by Professor Strasberg may raise doubts. Nevertheless, in 1994, Dr. Sergei Konovalenko from Vitebsk accidentally discovered a strange skeleton with a metallic prosthetic that replaced human bones. The skeleton was found during riverbed erosion of old graves, and it had an engraving on the prosthetic: Kharkov, 1934, ASCH 760978-C. The ultimate fate of the project remains a mystery, as all the data is currently classified. But we will tell you about other attempts to create a real biorobot later on. The idea of remote thought control has never left humanity. Soviet scientists were also intrigued by this concept, and in 1923, an engineer named Kaczynski developed a project called the Brain Radio. This project aimed to transmit impulses in the form of signals over long distances. Kaczynski believed that people could function as living radio stations, capable of both transmitting and receiving electromagnetic waves if they were tuned similarly. This discovery caused a sensation, and Kaczynski became a relatively well-known scientist, frequently giving lectures in research institutes and laboratories worldwide. In 1924, a brain technology experiment was conducted in Moscow. It influenced the body from a distance using low-frequency waves emitted by a new radio. The experiments were carried out on dogs, which were trained to execute the command "choose the right object." The dogs successfully completed the task but lost their ability to respond to regular training after the experiments. Little is known about the fate of the brain radio after this point, except that the experiments were discontinued. Kaczynski believed in the potential of his invention and left behind a book outlining the key ideas and calling for further research. However, it's unlikely that a technology that proved to be functional was abandoned. Rather, the development may have continued, but without public disclosure. After the Great Patriotic War, the USSR gained access to German projects of underground tanks with names like Submarine and Midgard Serpent. These designs were amphibious, capable of moving in different environments – on land, underground, and even underwater. Detailed drawings were studied by a group led by Professors Babata and Pokrovsky, and they concluded that the mechanics of the projects were well suited for military operations. It was believed that they could reach strategically important targets and detonate them from beneath the ground, making such events resemble earthquakes. The government allocated funds and personnel to create a Soviet underground tank, which was nicknamed the Battle Mole. A prototype with a nuclear reactor was developed, capable of reaching speeds of up to 7 km per hour while moving underground. The first test was successful in the Ural Mountains, where the Mole traveled 10 miles and destroyed all targets. However, the second experiment ended tragically with the tank's explosion and the death of the entire engineering team. Following this failure, the project was terminated. During Brezhnev's time, it was removed from the prospective developments, and the idea of an underground combat tank was forgotten forever. The creation of atomic submarines became a critical aspect during the Cold War, with both the USSR and the USA employing unconventional methods for detecting and neutralizing such vessels. Both sides were developing sophisticated anti-submarine systems. Among the most unusual projects was the creation of the VVA-14 aircraft, which combined the functions of a hydroplane, a chronoplane, bomber, and torpedo carrier. The VVA-14 had the capability of vertical takeoff thanks to its 12 turbojet engines. It employed the ground effect when operating over water and could transform into a high-altitude aircraft. The first flight of the VVA-14 took place in 1974. Despite successful trials, the project was suspended due to its complex design. Almost all prototypes were quickly scrapped, and the only surviving specimen is kept in the Central Museum of the Air Force in Monino. Unfortunately, it lacks wings and engines due to the secrecy of the development. Another secret project, while not as technologically advanced, proved to be highly effective in real combat conditions. In the history of the Second World War, there are numerous unique episodes that speak of the incredible courage, inventiveness, and sacrifice of Soviet citizens. One such episode tells the story of a secret weapon of the Red Army, the use of pigeons for combat purposes. Apart from their routine tasks of swiftly delivering urgent messages, these brave feathered creatures also carried out combat missions. They transported deadly incendiary devices into the enemy's rear. Pigeons, associated today with the symbol of peace, were turned into a genuine nightmare for German pilots and fuel trucks during World War II. They would strike from the sky suddenly and mercilessly, much like modern drones. At the training base for service dog training, also known as the Red Star Kennel, genuine sabotage pigeons were bred and trained. The methods of using these feathered saboteurs were strictly confidential, and even today, only a few specialists are familiar with this remarkable practice. A unique document kept in the Military Pigeon Center Museum describes the cassette for transporting pigeons carrying deadly munitions. The principle of this system was simple and reliable. An incendiary munition with a trigger mechanism was attached to the pigeon. The birds were trained to land on bombs that were suspended from the wings of combat aircraft and on fuel tanks, both stationary and mobile bases. A special mechanism would release the pigeons from the cassette attached to the aircraft, accommodating 24 birds. When a pigeon landed on its target, the munition would automatically detach, and when the trigger mechanism activated, an explosion occurred. Afterward, the pigeon would return to the base if it wasn't caught in the blast wave. But it wasn't just pigeons that were made to fly. There was another incredibly ambitious project for the time. In 1941, Oleg Antonov, the chief designer of the glider department of the People's Committee of the Aircraft Industry, received an order from the military command: develop a concept for armored vehicles capable of flying. The goal was to create a tank that could fly and be airdropped. The decision was made to take a T-60 armored vehicle and add wings from a standard transport glider. The idea was that the tank could be towed to the desired location in the air and then glide to the landing area. After landing, the machine would shed its wings and transition to combat operations. However, this experiment failed. The TB-3 bomber used for transport was unable to carry the armored tank, even after the removal of its turret and fuel draining. The engine simply overheated. Although the armored vehicle managed to land, the project was deemed unsuccessful. Experts believe that a more powerful aircraft should have been chosen for towing, as the Soviets had a choice at the time. However, such aircraft were being used for other military tasks. Many are unaware that the USSR planned to create its own particle accelerator. In 1983, the construction of the Proton Research Institute in the city of Proton was in full swing. At that time, the construction of a ring spanning over 13 miles in total had begun. This particle accelerator was envisioned as one of the most powerful accelerators globally, giving scientists the capability to explore elementary particles at an entirely new level. Over several years, the construction progressed at a slow pace, and during this time, only about 1.5 kilometers of tunnels had been laid. However, in 1987, the government decided to significantly accelerate the project. In 1988, for the first time since 1935, the Soviet Union imported 2 modern tunnel boring complexes from the Lovat company abroad. These complexes were meant to substantially expedite the construction project. However, the reforms and financial constraints derailed further construction of the project. It remained as a monument to engineering heritage until the imported equipment was stolen and the areas were repurposed as storage facilities. As part of the Omega program, which began with the supply of components for the Omega-2 air defense system, a full-fledged laser locator was developed. It used ruby lasers and an imitation of powerful radiation based on neodymium glass lasers. The head of the project was E.M. Sukharev, who conducted initial tests with laser location of aerodynamic objects. The system generated target images, identified their vulnerable points, and assessed the accuracy of guiding the powerful radiation simulator. The final stage involved studying the effects of atmospheric conditions on the propagation of laser beams. However, after conducting the research, it became clear that the set tasks could not be fully achieved, and the project was suspended. Subsequently, the development of a new experimental complex, 73TX Omega-2M, began. In this complex, a fast-flowing carbon dioxide laser became the source of powerful laser radiation. The locator was developed based on the television system TOV-Karat-2. Zakharev was appointed as the project leader, and Konyaev took on the position of his deputy, overseeing the practical execution of all the work and tests. On September 22, 1982, during testing, the radio-controlled target Ru-2 was first successfully hit with laser radiation. Subsequent tests confirmed this result, which was demonstrated to the senior leadership of the Air Defense and the Ministry of Radio Industry of the USSR. Based on the test results, it was decided to create a mobile version of the laser complex 74TX, which was designed, manufactured, and tested. This complex had the ability to engage targets like Ru-2B. However, none of the created installations could surpass existing SAM systems in terms of technical characteristics. The Omega project was highly ambitious, and despite the successful tests of the laser locator, information about it remained classified. We've previously discussed experiments conducted in the USSR to create super soldiers, and the final known stage of this endeavor was the project to develop a full-fledged biorobot. Advances in transplantology inspired scientists to apply new knowledge in the military sphere, leading to the idea of creating a biorobot. Engineer Vladimir Demikhin, who was involved in robotics and fusing organic tissues with inorganic ones, particularly contributed to this concept. For this purpose, a special device named ASZHL, which stood for Lebedev's life-sustaining apparatus, was developed. After some modifications, this device was supposed to ensure the functioning of a living being's head without its body. Externally, this device resembled a special spacesuit capable of accommodating the severed head of a living being and allowing it to perform basic pilot functions by following simple commands. There is evidence in the form of photographs confirming the creation of such a spacesuit. The final results of these experiments remain unknown. However, the project was closed a few years after the research began in this area. Apparently, no positive results were achieved, and as a result, this interesting weapon was not introduced into the Soviet Union's military. In the USSR, there were many fantastic projects. Just imagine of how many of them we will never hear anything. Truly successful developments would be classified for many years to come. Even if the implementation fell short at the time, the idea could always be preserved for the future. Thank you for watching.